I love a dish like this. Beef in a Mediterranean style. This is coming right off the grill. We're just going to season it and get it ready. This goes so well with things like bell peppers, eggplant, maybe some sage, beautiful eggplant sauce. Different ways to do this. Coming off the hotline, I'm going to slice the beef. We're going to serve two types of eggplant. One is in the form of grilled pieces right on top. The other is an eggplant puree sauce. This is going to provide me with a marvelous mouthfeel, this satiny, melt-away, very, very sensual dish. I'll take that meat juice. I'm going to add a little beef juice to the plate, crispy shallots. Everything's going to meld together perfectly. I've got a little bit of spice in my quinoa. I love this kind of combination. It's so refreshing, and it's got all this intensity. But you know what? I can also do a dish like this, cold, perfect for warm weather. Take this out to the dining room. I'm going to take you next door right now and show you how we do this cold. I'm larding the beef tenderloin with some vegetables. Now, larding, what is that? Well, the French chefs used to lard meat with some pieces of fat in order to keep it nice and moist. And we don't really need to do that because, of course, we want to eat leaner to begin with, and we have such choice cuts of meat. And in this case, it's going to be a fairly quick cooking technique. We end up with not wanting to have fat on the inside because it's not going to melt away like it would in a slow cooking process, but rather we're going to lard this with vegetables and even in this case some anchovy. Very, very flavorful to put the vegetables down the middle of the meat. What's really neat about this technique is we end up with these beautiful vegetables, not only for flavor but texture, contained within the meat. And the anchovy is going to give this an interesting sort of saltiness, which I really, really like. Anchovies in meat, well, that's not as crazy as it sounds. This has a great history, a great precedence in Mediterranean cooking, south of France cooking. And what I try to do is simply maybe do something a little different with this idea. Now, these larding needles are available just about in any decent butchery or housewares area of a department store. And the process of larding is really very simple. You just ride the flavoring agent right on through here. I've got some pieces of poblano chili, roasted eggplant, got a little bit of bell pepper that's been roasted. Meat's fully filled with the vegetables. Now I can go and take a little bit of garlic. I've got some chopped up raw garlic, or I could use roasted garlic. I'm going to smear that right in the middle of the meat. Get that all over there. And all I need to do now is season this. Salt, pepper, and we simply place that back together. So we're back to the original shape of our beef tenderloin. Before we butterflied it, this is what it looked like. Take a piece of string. We're going to tie this together. And really, the great thing about this dish and this entire preparation is that everything can be done not only hours in advance, but could practically be done the day before. And whenever you can come up with a dish where you're doing things well in advance, you free yourself up to be the host, be the entertainer, if you will, do all the other things that need to be done at the last minute. In this case, I'm going to get my beef roasted a day before, let all those flavors really marry and meld together nicely, and end up assembling this at the last possible moment. And it's, I think, sometimes very, very refreshing to enjoy something that isn't necessarily hot off the grill, but to rather enjoy it when it's at room temperature or just slightly chilled, especially when it's warm out. You can have a great summer treat. Once I've got my meat larded with the vegetables, trussed up here, seasoned, ready to go, I simply place it on the grill, cook it to a nice medium rare, take it off, let it rest. Could serve it at room temperature, or I could put it in the refrigerator. Once I've grilled it, it's in this condition. I've left it nice and rare, medium rare, the way I'd serve it normally. I can go ahead and do the next step, which is to put the salad together. This is a grain and chickpea salad. Now that's a great combination of flavors because we have these chickpeas, garbanzo beans, as they're sometimes called, that have been slowly cooked the way we cook legumes with some vegetables and maybe a little stock, garlic. So they're very flavorful, they're toothsome, they've got this little elegant creaminess to them. I've got some grain, I could use cracked wheat, this is quinoa, I could also use some couscous. I can put this in any ratio, roughly 2 parts of the grain to 1 part of the chickpea, and I'll stir this together. it's just a nice contrasting texture because the grain is very fine and the chickpea is quite a bit larger. I can add some cucumber. This will bring a nice, fresh, crispy vegetable note to this dish. I have eggplant, sort of echo the eggplant theme. We've got it on the inside of the beef. We've got some large chunks of eggplant. Now I can go ahead and add some olive. I have some beautiful Ligurian olive that has been cut into some julienne type pieces. I can add that. And then why don't I go ahead and add some parsley. I have Italian flat leaf parsley here. This is kind of nice. A lot of different herbs would work great here. Basil would be very, very nice. I could certainly use chives, but I like parsley for this. I like to leave the herbs a little bit on the coarser side. I like to really enjoy their texture. Sometimes if you chop herbs too finely, you don't get a chance to appreciate their texture. So herbs get chopped, in we go. And I can add a squeeze of lemon here, maybe a little bit more. And the lemon also will help cut into these ingredients. And all we're doing is taking this nice theme of Mediterranean flavors, putting them together. I think we can handle a little drizzle of olive oil at this point. The nice thing about the oil is it'll help keep everything bound together, just slightly. We don't need a lot, but just enough to keep the grain kind of adhering to all the vegetables. So we'll stir that up. Now the best part of the job of any cook is tasting it along the way. A little salt and we're done. Now we can put together our sauce. I want something that is going to bring me a lot of flavor, but that isn't real heavy. I could use a mayonnaise type sauce or a creamy type of puree sauce. In this case, because I've got these nice rich pungent flavors working with the anchovy, the beef, this grain, chickpea salad, I want something that's a little bit lighter. I'm going to start with a red wine reduction. This becomes our acid. We don't really need any vinegar after this, but we also have something that's maybe a little bit more complex than an acid vinegar. That is the flavor of the red wine. It's not just this harsh, raw, acidic flavor. It's this flavor of concentrated red wine. I have black olive that I've pureed in the food processor. So this is going to give this body, reintroduce the olive theme. Just kind of whisk that in there. Now I could even go back and I'm going to add olive oil. Now if I want to reintroduce anchovy, that would be fine too. I happen to love anchovy, but in this case, I'm just going to whisk this up, stir it up. And this sauce is so flavorful. So there's a real sensual pungency to this sauce, both in its aroma and its flavor. And it's really just going to tie everything together on this dish. I think that's ready to go. So I've got my sauce. I have my grain and chickpea salad, and I have my grilled beef, which has been larded with these wonderful aromatic Mediterranean vegetables and the anchovy, and I'm ready to put this together. This could be done in a couple different ways, either the individual preparation style or more of the platter style service, the family style service as we sometimes call it. We need to remove our string that we have trussed the meat with, tied the meat with, and just take that right off. And remember, this is, this has been done in advance. It's all the flavors are just perfectly married together now in a really fantastic way. I'm going to go ahead and slice this. You can really cut this to any degree of thickness. I think when you're eating meat like this cold, it's probably nicer to slice it a little bit thinner than you might when you serve it warm. And so you can see how beautiful the vegetables are when they're larded within, just really studying the meat. I mean, it's a really fantastic sight visually. Well, we could plate this in a lot of different ways. I could literally pick the meat up like such and place it on the edge of the plate here. Maybe come back with a touch of salt. I don't want too much because, remember, I've got anchovy and I've got a sauce that's got some olive to it. I'll go ahead and take my grain salad and we're just going to place a nice mound of it right here on the side. Or I could serve this in a separate bowl if I want to. We'll go ahead and take our sauce, very simply, spoon it on. I'd like to just spoon some of it right across the meat. maybe a little bit around the edges. Give it a little twist if I like. So here's our dish for a warm summer day. The beef's grilled. It's got these really pungent, beautiful flavors. Really a delight to eat something like this out in the sunshine if you're lucky. Maybe we'll serve this with a rosé wine, something that's fruity, low alcohol content, very refreshing. Something like this would be perfect for a dish like this. Well, I'm just going to have to take a little bite right here. Don't be afraid of the idea of making a consommé. It's really nothing more than a clarified stock or broth. I start with frothing up some egg whites, add some vegetable, carrot, onion, celery, tomato, thyme, some bay leaf. Let's incorporate that a little bit. What happens with the egg whites is that they end up acting almost like a magnet, drawing all the sediment and impurity from the stock. We can take it a step further if we want to by adding some ground up beef or chicken, or if we're making a fish consommé, even a little bit of ground up fish or shellfish. This not only adds more flavor, but it really helps create a wonderful, clean consommé. As a final touch, we're going to add a splash of rice wine vinegar. This helps in the clarification process. It also adds a little acidic note, which is nice. I've got my stock at a simmer. I carefully spoon this in. And really, this is the only tricky part in the entire process of making the consommé. That is, stirring this mixture so that it doesn't cook on the sides of the bottom of the pan. That really means just staying with it for the next 8 or 10 minutes while this comes up to a simmer. Then I'm able to turn it down, carefully stirring it, and allowing everything to coagulate, creating a sponge, or as it's sometimes called, a raft. Basically, it's a protein sponge. After about 8-10 minutes, I end up with the raft just beginning to form. It still needs to go. At this point, we don't want to stir it because we want to keep the raft intact. We don't want to break it up. And then after another 8 or so minutes, it's firm enough for me to take this off the heat and strain it. We're going to bring it over to the side. I'm going to use a double straining process where I'll take one strainer and place it right in the center of the raft very, very carefully. And then I'm able to spoon out this beautiful golden clear broth right through some cheesecloth or muslin cloth, as it's sometimes called, through a second strainer. The result is something that is simultaneously very light and delicate, but explosive in flavor. I can serve this very simply as it is, maybe with some noodles flavored with soy sauce, maybe a few pieces of mushroom, or I love to actually use this as a cooking vehicle where I can take chicken or meat or fish, cook it in the liquid, and then serve the actual finished product in the liquid. Unbelievable combination of flavors. In this case, I'm going to make almost an evolved pot of food, if you will. So full of flavor, but so light and delicate. Once I have my consommé done, I'm ready to take it in a lot of different directions. One of my favorite things to do is take a variety of different vegetables and some meat, cook it all together in the consommé, bring it all back out, and then serve the consommé as the broth, kind of bringing everything together. The idea for this particular dish is sort of an updated pot of foo, if you will, where I've got beef, beautiful beef tenderloin, and some root vegetables. I've got rutabaga, parsnip, some turnip, carrot, a little bit of celery root. The idea of cooking things separately like this allows me to keep the flavor and the integrity intact in the vegetables, as opposed to throwing everything in a pot, letting it cook until it's done. Yeah, that can be great. The flavors can meld together. But in this case, we keep the identity and the integrity of all the flavors separate and intact. The potato element of this dish comes in the form of gnocchi. I've got an Idaho potato that I've roasted. We're going to cut this open, scoop out all the interior, and run this through a ricer. You know, gnocchi is a great treat because you end up with, it's sort of pasta-like, but it's got a more delicate center, a more delicate texture. It's this little pillow of this potatoey dough. I like the idea of also taking it a step further and sautéing my gnocchi so I get a little crispy note going with it. So we'll go ahead, cut our potato up, throw it in this ricer, this vegetable fine grater. These things are so wonderful at home because so many things can be pureed. And with something like this, it's a fine, fine puree, and it just goes right on through. Really easy to work with. And if you're doing something that's got some fibers to it, the fibers do not get through here either. So that's another nice little advantage with something like this. So we'll go ahead and scrape our potato, put it down here. And there's just two schools of thought on this, whether we end up using an egg or not using an egg. I prefer to use an egg because I like the chewiness that an egg brings to the pasta or to the dough. I like the way that the egg gives it this extra sort of toothsomeness and the richness that it provides. First thing I do is incorporate the egg, a couple spoonfuls of flour. And like pasta, this dough will tell you how much flour to add. As you incorporate the flour, you'll feel it. You'll feel it coming together. It'll be less and less moist, and you'll know: do I need to add more? Is it the right balance? And seasoning is also important at this time too. There's the idea of surface seasoning, where we could wait until we're done and add a little bit of salt and pepper. But I like it when it goes all the way through. So I like to add a little bit of salt along the way so that it's seasoned all the way. Anyway, we've got a little bit more flour here. This might be a great time to go ahead and drop our beef if we're going to try to time everything so that it all comes out together, because that will just take a few more moments. I can add some salt here and a little bit of pepper, and we're just going to drop the beef right in the consomme and let it poach until it's just medium rare, nicely done. This is a perfect opportunity to add the salt to the consomme. We'll sprinkle that in. Let's go ahead, we'll drop a couple pieces in here, and we'll just let those go, and we'll monitor them along the way, see how they're doing. And I'll go ahead and finish up with my gnocchi. Put it out on my work surface here. And this is easy to add more flour to at this point. Now, I actually don't need all this, so I can kind of cut a piece and only use what I'm going to work with here. Roll it up, knead the flour right into the dough. And just roll it along there. So the idea of really enjoying the beautiful flavors of these rustic, earthy vegetables, but experiencing what they're all about, is really, I think, brought to the fore with this sort of presentation, this sort of preparation. The idea where everything is done separately, and then everything is just heated through at the last moment and put together. It's really pretty spectacular. All I need to do is kind of go down the line of this little rolled out tube of dough here, and right as I'm cutting it, I pinch it a little bit. I can make really any size, any shape that I want to. These little pillows are so delicate and wonderful. I could make these a little bit in advance, let them sit in the refrigerator if I want to, so that they're ready to go. The dough can certainly be made in advance, and then at the last moment rolled out. At this point, we can go ahead and drop our gnocchi into some seasoned water. Salt's all we need. These won't take long to cook, these little dumplings. Perhaps 2 minutes at the most. So along the way, we'll check our beef, maybe get our vegetables in the pot. Those will only take a moment as well. And I just love the way these things just kind of swim around in this boiling liquid as they float to the top. So let's check and see how the meat's doing. Okay, it's still pretty rare, but it's coming along. And this would be a great opportunity for us to go ahead and add these beautiful vegetables. We've got parsnip, I've got some celery root, some turnip, a little rutabaga, some carrot. These things, remember, are roasted, caramelized, rich with flavor, concentrated flavor. Anytime you roast a vegetable, you end up concentrating the flavor of the vegetable. We can go ahead and warm these pieces back through here. And then they'll just take a second. We'll pull them out when we need them. I'm also going to plop a few bay leaves in here. This will just give it a little perfume at the last moment, that fresh fragrance. A few peppercorns can go in there. And we're ready to remove our gnocchi. They're all beautiful. They're just floating. These are really, really nice. And all we need to do is toss these with a little bit of butter. And we can go ahead and put them in a saute pan once we've done that. So the butter will help us get the nice brown color. We'll add some oil to the pan. And as these are sauteing up, we'll be able to take everything out of our liquid and almost begin to plate our dish. Now, a preparation like this works well in two different ways. We certainly could serve this up family style, where we've got everything on platters, maybe the beef on one big platter, the vegetables on another, We can serve the consomme on the side. The gnocchi can go on yet another plate. So we'll add these to the pan, and we'll kind of stir these as we go. We'll get the heat at the right level. And they'll just begin to get this beautiful golden brown sheen around the edges, just ever so slightly crispy. So here we are. Let's check and see how everything's going. Check that beef. It's probably getting very close now. Yep, it's just about done. This would be a great opportunity to remove the vegetables, and we'll be able to cut those up a little bit if we desire a certain kind of presentation. The other way to serve this is the individual portion, which is when you have a special occasion. We can take the beef out now. I think that's just about right on. And it just takes a moment of extra effort, and you really end up with a great, great presentation. Let's get all these things out of here. This is so great. I'm just going to set that down here. Our gnocchis are getting a nice golden color around the edges. We'll continue to flip these over and stir them up a little bit. At the very end, I'm just going to sprinkle a few herbs on these, so it should be perfect. Remember, my ingredients are staying nice and warm. The meat is still actually cooking. We always want to pull it out slightly premature because it will continue to cook. So here's our version if we want to individually plate this. We can start by taking a few of the vegetables and cutting them up a little bit. Take this beautiful rutabaga, cut it into a few pieces, cut the carrot into a couple pieces, turnip, beautiful, and parsnip. Each one of these things adds different sweetness levels and different notes of flavor, so keep in mind the combination of everything kind of working together. Gnocchis are just about done. Just get that nice golden brown color. Oh boy, those are so great. So we'll go ahead and just place our vegetables in the serving bowl here. And we can just sort of plate our meat right in the center if we want to. So that'll be kind of nice. So there's our vegetable mixture, just piled in the bowl, very, very simply. We can remove our gnocchi. I always like to take something like this and put it on a cloth or a paper towel. Anytime I'm doing anything like this where something has been exposed to oil, vegetables, even French fries, whatever it may be, just so we can blot off the extra oil. We want things as clean and as delicate as possible. We did season already, but I'm going to add a little bit of salt to the surface, and a little bit of herb is very, very nice. We can add a few herbs here too. Now we've got the meat. We have the option certainly of placing the meat whole on the center. We could also slice the meat. It's sometimes nice to cut it into a few pieces and sort of plate it in an interesting way. Very simply, we can, a little salt. And I'm going to just set these pieces right in the center here. And the meat is so pretty in and of itself that, we don't really need much. We don't need any kind of, sometimes people say, well, how do you make food? How do you present food? Or how do you make food look a certain way or look beautiful? Food is beautiful. You don't need much to make food look beautiful. When you have fresh, clean, pure foodstuffs and you just let them speak for themselves, how much more do you need? We've got the extra gnocchis. We could serve these on the side if we want to. Let's go ahead and take our broth, our consomme. This becomes the flavoring agent. In we go. If I want to, I can pour right on the meat. It'll continue to cook the meat a little bit around. And go back and add a few more herbs, a twist of pepper. And think of how healthy this is. We haven't sauteed this meat. We don't have a rich hollandaise sauce or butter sauce or a big strong reduction sauce. It's very, very light stuff, but the flavors are there. They're all coming together. I could flavor this broth with exotic spices if I want to, or I can leave it just like it is. Pretty simple. Thanks for joining us on the Kitchen Sessions. I look forward to seeing you next time. And if you'll excuse me, I've got to try this.